if you're prepared, the problem is not that you're prepared. The problem is what happens to your neighbor who's not prepared. And that's really the issue. There's a lot of people who are just thinking happy days are here again. Everybody thinks happy days are here again, and then it crashes. So anyway, this is a very time to be pessimistic and optimistic. And the mistake I made at our 3-day here in Scottsdale was I forgot to say, well, we start with macro first. And that came from my teacher, Buckminster Fuller. He says most people start small and then they go smaller. They go micro to micro. And the mistake I made is that I started macro as best I could. And a lot of people say, I didn't come from the macro, I went from the micro. And that's school, because they teach you to be a specialist and get more specialized. So you become a doctor, but then you have to specialize down. So that's going from micro to micro. And so I forgot to prep the class. It was like 300 or 400 people. And I forgot to say, we start with the biggest picture, which is macro. So when I first met Andy, he was talking about Afghanistan, and the average American doesn't even know where Afghanistan is. And what people don't know, Afghanistan is something that's called a parrot in the military, because I was a U.S. Marine. We called Afghanistan the parrot's beak or something like that. And the rule of thumb for the military is who controls the parrot beak or the parrot point, whatever they called it, controlled the world. So that's why when the Taliban and the Russians had Afghanistan, they were starting to control the world. So military guys see it that way. So when I first met Andy, he was making waves talking about Afghanistan. I was talking about Biden pulling down the Keystone XL pipeline, which sent the price of oil through the roof, and then tearing down Trump's wall, and then Afghanistan. And so all of this stuff is being orchestrated from America. So I explained the significance of Afghanistan for people. This is podcast number 4. That Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard in 71, and the economy went crazy. So with gold not going, 74, Nixon sent Kissinger to Saudi Arabia, and instead of being a gold-backed currency, the dollar, it became a petrol-backed dollar, and that gave the United States much more power. So when I first met Andy, I wasn't aware of what happened in Afghanistan. I saw from the military side. We left, $90 billion with the best equipment in the world behind. I mean, thank you, Joe Biden, and your son Hunter. I'm sure he brokered that deal. But you know what I mean? And then Saudi Arabia says, man, we can't trust America.
Right. Exactly.
And so that's why the oil prices, and first act was to cut off the Keystone XL pipeline, send oil from $30 a barrel to $130 a barrel, which causes inflation. And then he pulls up Afghanistan. So this is when Andy and I bonded as brothers, are going, holy mackerel. Andy sees the macro first. And then Saudi Arabia says, we're out of it. So they joined the BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Then it became Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Saudi Arabia, and using the US dollar as the reserve currency of the world. But I think, let me get my thoughts together on this whole thing. So when France and Xi of China started buddying, Andy called yesterday. He says, guess what they did? So today's emergency podcast number 4, what does it mean that suddenly France jumped up and I don't know if they joined the BRICS, but what does France and Xi getting together is that's like, the U.S. has been the big bully in the play yard. Suddenly all the other kids are saying, well, you're not going to be the bully anymore. We're going to gang up on you. That's what the BRICS are. They said, hey, we're going to take you down, bully. Because it's all coming down fast right now. It's going faster, like the toilet paper roll. It's going faster and faster and faster. And just yesterday, I was talking to Andy about France joining China. France now working with China. That's one of our biggest trading partners saying, screw you, U.S., we're going to deal with China in Chinese currency, not the U.S. dollar. The average American has no idea what that means. So let me explain from a macro on this whole thing. Like I said, we had 3 days, and I forgot to let people know, when you study a subject, you want to go from the biggest picture of all. But our academic system starts small and goes smaller. So they teach you to be a little mouse and then bury a little hole. So you become a doctor and you become more specialized, but you think you're smart. And that's why our accountant, our CPA in the room, Tom Wheelwright, he says his wife refuses to work with doctors, because they go from small to smaller. And I'm starting in the biggest possible. So what Andy is talking about here, there's 2 basic laws that are violated. When Nixon in 71 took the dollar off the gold standard, what happened was that he violated Gresham's law. And Gresham's law says when bad money enters a system, good money goes into hiding. So in what happened in 71, Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. People started, guys like me started buying more gold. The second law is Triffin's dilemma. And that happened in 1944. What happened in 1944 at the Bretton Woods Agreement in New Hampshire is the world said that we agree that the world would trade in US dollars. And everything was hunky-dory and fine after 1944. But now the Bretton Woods Agreement is falling apart because Triffin's dilemma says that this is the big point that Andy woke me up to. Triffin's dilemma meant the US had to supply dollars to every central bank throughout the world. So we had to print probably quadrillions of dollars. And what happens is when the playground bully, the US, and the BRICS nations gang up against the bully, they say, take your dollars back. Mm-hmm. And when those dollars come roaring back into America, we have a thing called hyperinflation. And every time there's hyperinflation, guess what happens? Dictators arise. And when dictators arise, the murder starts. So Andy gave me one of my most precious gifts ever gave us, like those posters hanging behind him, was executive order. An executive order we talked about. We had General Jack Bergman at our 3-day in Scottsdale. An executive order, he's a congressman now. He and I were both pilots in the Marine Corps. He became a 3-star general. Now he's a congressman. What an executive order means, it's a dictatorship. You don't need the Congress or the Senate to change anything. They just EO it, executive order it. So now we're a dictator. And please hear what I'm saying. That's when the murdering starts. There was a woman there, I didn't have a chance to bring her up, but she's from Laos, she's from Cambodia. And she saw her sister raped and murdered by Pol Pot. But that's what happens when the economy crashes. So Triffin's dilemma violates the Bretton Woods 1944, and trillions of dollars will come floating back across America and inflate. We haven't seen inflation yet.
Small ebook, big impact, the wealth tree. The only 4 ways that will make you financially free forever. Download it here for free.